Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I speaking loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. Put your hand up if I stop speaking loud enough and you can't hear me. It's 1985, I'm 19 years old, I'm a student from London, spending my summer vacation in New York. And I stumble across old warehouses, buildings, and factories in places like the Meatpacking District and Soho. The areas were run down and the buildings had largely been vacated by traditional industries who had left the city and taken over by groups of artists, musicians and other artisans who've crudely broken up the floors into usable spaces, and informal creative communities had been formed within and around the buildings. And the leaders of these communities, which I saw in New York at the time, were, believe it or not, all artists. I thought it was amazing. I loved it. 19 years old, I was absolutely blown away by what I saw in New York at the time. By the time I left New York, I knew that I wanted to go back to London and create something very similar. Back in London, I did a bit of research, I begged, I borrowed, I started buying buildings in the East End of London, in Hoxton, Clerkenwell, and Shoreditch, and Whitechapel. At the time they were virtually giving the buildings away, all the traditional industries which had been located in the East End of London and moved out of London. And I broke the spaces up into usable areas, and the artists and other creatives started moving into these spaces, these old factories. Art was created within the buildings, on the buildings, around the buildings, and between the buildings. I'd never seen anything like it before. London had really never seen anything like it before. Artists that have subsequently become huge names in the contemporary British modern art world had studios at our buildings. Chris Philly, Rakib Shaw, names like Jake and Dino Chapman you may have heard of, Idris Khan, Chantal Joffe, and many, many others started their careers, had their first studios in buildings which we put together and broke up in this way in the East End of London. By the mid-1990s, the gallerists had started to open up around our buildings and started representing the resident artists which were housed within our buildings. The two most groundbreaking, significant contemporary art galleries in London, White Cube and the Victoria Miro Gallery, are both our neighbours in Hoxton. I was in this business. I loved it. I was immersed in it. I knew that there was nothing in the world I would prefer to be doing. But it came as a complete revelation to me that what I was doing had a name. I remember that I was standing with a young architect looking up at one of our buildings, and he said to me, "Jonny, what you are doing here is called urban regeneration." This was a massive revelation to me. By attaching a name to the thing that I was doing, somehow transformed it into something that was much bigger. It gave it definition. I knew that that breathing new life into inner city buildings and areas was all I was interested in doing, and now it had a name, and it was called urban regeneration. I founded Urban Lime in 1992, and since then we've worked on 4 major urban regeneration projects. The first was pretty much as described in the East End of London. By the way, the East End of London, there's been a huge movement east in London, and these areas which we were buying for nothing and working with these groups of people as discussed are now majorly prime properties in London. The second, in the middle of the 1990s, I moved to do a major regeneration scheme in Brighton, which is a small seaside town about an hour outside of London. The third was Cape Town, where from 2005 onwards we've been acquiring and putting together schemes in that city, and from 2014 Durban. Our project selection starts at the macro level, the bigger level, by identifying cities where a significant gap has occurred between the public perception of the city and the reality of the city. Cities, for various reasons, go in and out of fashion, and the fashion acts as a filter, distorting the reality, and there becomes a mismatch between reality and perception. Does it sound like something you come across in Durban today? It is in this space, in this arbitrage, which we as urban regeneration specialists operate. Post-apartheid, in all the South African cities, they went deeply out of fashion. And there was a huge movement away from the cities. The businesses, the investors, the white people, they retreated into the safety of what they perceived as safe suburbs, behind high walls and gated communities and office parks. Contrary to the global trend, which has seen a huge movement towards cities, many South Africans and South African businesses abandoned their great cities. Cape Town's not an African city like Durban. When the businesses and the white people left, there was literally an abandoned city. And our job as regeneration specialists was to go back area by area, street by street, starting at the perimeter, and to repurpose the city, and to reinvent each area of the city, starting from the perimeters, working inwards, one street at a time, one area at a time. That was the regeneration project in Cape Town. In Durban, when the exodus to the north happened, African people reclaimed their city to a large extent, and to a large extent this city works extremely well, and it's fit for purpose, despite the fact that there's been a massive lack of investment and vision. Many buildings, such as the one you're sitting in today, have not had a dime spent on them in the last 20 years. On a project-by-project basis, our job is to have a vision for the area that is transformative. We start with the big idea, we acquire the buildings, we need to make it happen, and we use the tools at our disposal to bring that big vision to life. The working tools of our trade are capital, appropriate architecture and design, tenant curation, and lastly, but very importantly, public art. We often use art within the public spaces of buildings, and probably more importantly to use art in the urban landscape that sits between the buildings. Every project we work on is completely unique, and every artwork we install is specifically selected to align to the project and the specific space which we place it in. Let me show the slides of Durban Club Place. Right here in Durban Club Place, where you're sitting this evening, Urban Lime have acquired two very large buildings on either side of the street, 6 Durban Club, which you can see here, and the old Nedbank Towers, which is going to be called Durban Club Chambers, which we're sitting in today. I'm extremely excited to publicly announce this evening that we are creating a world-class professional quarter of 25,000 square meters of space, anchored by the legal profession, inhabited by hundreds of attorneys and advocates, as well as many other professionals. As well as totally refurbishing the buildings, you can see the sort of before and after. We're going to be pedestrianising the streets. As well as refurbishing the buildings, we're also going to be creating some amazing public spaces which will include a members club with restaurants, coffee shops and bars, mediation suites, arbitration rooms, conferencing facilities, lecture theatres, and the KZN Law Library will be relocating to the professional quarter. It's a very, very exciting project, and we are very excited to be working on it. Katie, can you play the film?
o'clock, and joining us on the line, Jonny Friedman, the CEO of Urban Land Properties.
Hello, great to be here.
Tell us more about this Enter Lambede artwork.
We're starting a big project in the city centre of Durban where we're putting together a professional quarter, and part of the anchoring of the professional quarter is this major public artwork which we commissioned. The artist Keeling Longer, who's a Durban artist, and when I saw this work I was just blown away by it. It's a depiction of Anthony Mbedi, a big name in South Africa District with a founding president for NCUC. And he was also a lawyer. And creating what will be world-class professional quarter anchored by the legal profession. We decided to, in a way, kick this project off with this major mural.
Cities are more than just their bones, which is your buildings, your roads, and your architecture, and your spaces. Cities are also about having a heart. So to regenerate a city, you have to regenerate the heart as well. And public art, murals, and creativity help to regenerate that heart.
He was a man that liked reading a lot. Even when he was going to look after the curtain on the field, he took his book and read.
Biggest mural in visiting.
It's just suffering from exactly this amount of time that's been spent on the sea for 20 years. It's been a complete Over 1 billion rand investment in the city centre.
For this mural is exposed to the people.
Public art can be used on a bigger level as a rallying cry, as a declaration of intent, as a communication tool, and sometimes it's there importantly just to enhance the beauty of the urban environment. Zakile's work, Anton Lambedi, Bachelor of Law, has provoked communication. It has already encouraged many people to re-engage with the city, and it has provided the anchor, the starting gun, and the provenance for this professional quarter, which is an exciting, substantial, and confident urban regeneration scheme in the heart of this great city. Thank you for being here tonight. This city needs you to be interested in it, and it needs ambassadors. My job, the job of my team, is to ignite a torch to provoke and encourage a change in the discourse, in the language surrounding the city. This is incredibly important. When you go home this evening, I'd like to encourage you to talk to your families, talk to your neighbours, talk to your colleagues, talk about the exciting way our city is moving forward. Talk about the professional quarter and how this area of the city is undergoing a radical transformation. Talk about the billions of rands that are being invested across this city today. Talk about Zakile's work and the wider meaning to our city. Together, we will move the conversation forward and try, by doing so, to transform the future of this city. Thank you.